We're going to start today with some maths.
Oh boy.
So
What a treat.
I'm going to get my phone out because I don't actually have the data off the top of my head. We've got live data here. So
Wow.
We are up-to-date statistics. So recently I made a video on the Ivory Coast, very similar to the podcast
Cote d'Ivoire.
that PY and I did together. A lot of fun making that podcast. The video is called How Ivory Coast Slid into Two Civil Wars. It took about 3 weeks to make. So decent amount of effort. Lots of graphs, lots of maps and whatnot, and yeah, high production value video if you don't mind me saying myself. A bit of a myth that YouTubers are just rolling in ad rev. And so we're going to do an expose on how much YouTubers actually earn from ad rev. If you want to know how much commission is going into the pockets of PY and Ben here, that video that took 3 weeks to make made a total revenue of $14.16.
Wow.
So I want to start today by breaking down some myths because we are going to talk economics with Ted Theodore. And I think the most appropriate place is to start with the economy of YouTube.
Sure.
So basically, for YouTuber to be sustainable and to kind of have the finances cover the amount of time that is put into the videos, they need to sell some sort of product. That's a non-negotiable. I'm hoping I've made the case that ad rev is not enough for long-term financial sustainability. Now, again, that video got 4,400 views, which is on the lower side for the channel. But even videos like, I had a John Curtin one that's gotten about 130,000 views or so. Because I said the word Hitler at about the 5-minute mark, that got demonetized for a bit.
Wow.
I successfully fought that.
So you could get on there and be like, I hate Hitler. And they'd be like,
oh yeah, even if you mentioned,
Wow.
yeah. So they're YouTube's super pedantic about that sort of stuff. So,
That's crazy.
a lot.
What are you meant to do?
So a lot of
He doesn't exist. Like
yeah. Well, that's what
That's not history.
I literally say he who should not be named on some videos, or I'd say Germany rather than Hitler or the Nazis.
Okay.
So a lot of YouTubers don't even touch Hitler just because it's just rapid fire way to get demonetized. Now I successfully fought that, but for around about 30 or 40,000 of those views, it was demonetized anyway. So even on videos that are more successful than that one, you're not exactly killing it. So in order to be sustainable, there's kind of two routes, right? One is you have a Patreon, which we do have, and we get to hear about Ben and PY being on TV at the Olympics for today's Patreon special. So
what a treat.
Yeah, that's the money's going to a very good cause there. The second is to sell some sort of product. And typically, what happens is YouTubers will sell something like HelloFresh, will sell something like, what was that one where you got to be a lord in Scotland? Because if you owned land in...
Oh, right.
It was a bit of a scam, wasn't it, in the end?
Well, you're just buying like a square foot of land in Scotland, right?
And they told you that made you a lord. But
Yeah.
I don't think it actually
By
did.
some supposed little loophole in the common law.
And so typically, right, you're selling products
You
that...
could, flog like NFTs and stuff.
Yeah, well, we have had some NFT offers, which we've unfortunately had to take the high road on that one and not sell our soul that early on in the game.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty much you have to sell some sort of product. And reality is that if those sponsors are going to come back, they need to see a return on an investment.
Yeah.
And if we're selling something like NFTs, there will be no return on investment because we have full confidence in you not to take financial advice from us. And so basically, like, YouTubers have to sell some sort of product that people are going to buy, or they just have to be that big enough that many companies are happy just to continually roll the dice. Like, chocolate company will sponsor you, get no return on investment, pull out, next company comes in, and so forth.
Yeah.
So to actually make this some sort of work, you need to sell some sort of product that people are going to want to buy. And so rather than have other companies dictate terms to us, the only sponsor we've had is a product we know you would want to buy, which is Ned Kelly Armored Outlaw. So our conscience is completely guilt-free about shilling for such a wonderful game like that.
Oh yeah.
But you have to sell a product that people want.
Yeah.
And so...
What do the people want, Cam?
Well, considering you are listening to a podcast about a random guy that wasn't even a prime minister from Federated Australian history in the first half century of the Federation of Australia, we figured that that's something you probably might want to learn more about. Now, when you're in school, what did you learn about Federation?
The date that it happened.
Easy one to remember.
Yeah. 1st of Jan.
Yeah.
Was it 1900 or 1901? I want to say 1901.
I'm not gonna. The course is gonna cover that.
Yeah.
I can't offer that.
You got to pay to find out more.
No. Federation came into effect in 1901, but was functional by 1900.
Okay.
Yeah, of course.
So that's when Constitution became effective, 1st of January 1901. So look, we basically got together and I kind of did a lot of research and made a course, a 10-part course, so 10 plus prime ministers in 10 days in the first half century of Australian history.
10 modules.
10 modules. It's done classroom style. There's activities for you to do.
Is there like an activity, like surely the first one, the first activity of each module is like make a title page for your exercise book before you get started, right? Like,
I mean, if we wanted to make it like 50-hour course, we could add all sorts of things that no one would ever do and just claim, oh yeah, this is course material that we've provided for you. No, it's activities like I've written a sentence out, but the sentence is incorrect. You've got to rewrite it so that's correct. So it's kind of using a combination of Bloom's taxonomy, lower order, higher order thinking.
okay.
So it's I'd like to say it's pretty well thought out. And if
You are a teacher by trade as well.
I am a teacher by trade. And so right now, when it comes to YouTube podcast material, a lot of the research and a lot of the editing and script writing and that sort of stuff is done before work. So it's like 5 a.m. wake up, we go.
Wow.
We go to 7. And so just imagine a possibility where this could be more of what Mr. M does. And can you imagine if we had a much bigger toolkit, what we could actually do? So if we kind of break down the maths and break down the numbers here.
I just can't even imagine.
So we have around about 5,000 people that listen to this a month, of which around 3,000 are regulars. So we got a pool of around about 3,000, like the good men and women of mostly Australia, but also like Canada, America, Mozambique, Botswana, like a couple of other ones there as well. Or other than that, you're just using a VPN. The good people of this podcast are regular and are loyal. And so if we did the maths here, if we had, say, let's just take 3,000 people that bought the course. It's a $20 course. 3,000 people buy a $20 course. That equates to about half a year's median salary. And so it's wins for everyone, right? It's about 100. I think the median salary is about $117,000.
Is it really?
I mean, cost of living. It's
Yeah, wow. There you go.
I think that's right.
We got work to do.
Well, yeah, but yeah, exactly. So, but if let's just
Crazy.
say
That's impressive.
the 3,000 good men and women watching this, where if you're watching this in like Ballarat, Bathurst, Orange, wherever you happen to be watching this from, let's just say you bought the course. Not only do you get 10 hours of exclusive content and a product that we've created for you, you're also helping expand the possibilities of what we can actually do here at Mr. M. Half a year of full-time content, that is more regular videos, more thoroughly researched podcasts. It is documentaries. It gives us the ability to actually go to destinations and do destination sites documentaries. We have obviously done the David McBride podcast, which was quite a successful podcast. We can have more of those possibilities. Yeah, there's this big idea board of getting to speak into some of Kevin Rudd's guys. And making a documentary about Kevin S7. There's possibilities that are there.
I feel like at the moment, our hands are almost behind our back. And then this could unleash them.
Yeah, I think we've done an 8-minute ad here, so this is quite a lengthy one. But all I'm asking is just consider possibilities here. If you are, let's just say you listen to this on Sunday, the 11th of August, you've got the notification turned on, you get the 6 p.m. upload. Why not just put this on pause? If let's just say you listen to podcasts while cooking dinner, put this on pause, head on over to the link in the description, buy the course, and then you got 10 hours of exclusive content whenever you want to do it and complete at your own pace. And the very best part of the Mr. M community are the podcast listeners. That's not me pandering here. That's just factually true. Literally, some of them are funding us to talk about primary school memories. So let's give them your dues. And so can you imagine if we pulled together what we could actually do while you actually get something out of it and it wouldn't be charity either. That's my pitch.
I'm inspired.
Of course.
I'm moved.
Yeah. That's my pitch for the Mr. M, Mr. M History
You're
Future.
You're offering something in return. It's not.
It's not. It's
a service.
It's and if you want to jump on the Patreon too, again, like you do get to listen to these guys talk about themselves getting on TV at the Olympics. They were there as spectators.
Yeah.
Or breakdancers.
Yeah, I think there'll be a
Road
bit
to
of
LA
breakdancing
starts.
chat.
Yeah.
And so that's my pitch. You do that what you will.
Cool.
I will say this: if finances are an issue, like obviously, like I said, cost of living is going up. I know some people are really stretched for mortgages, or you're a poor uni student, or whatever it is. Just send an email through to mrmitchellhistory@gmail.com. We're happy to be very flexible and want to make this course accessible, while also trying to raise a bit of revenue for the future of what this channel can do and what the podcast can do moving forward.
Also, if you don't want to, don't have to do it.
No.
Your choice.
Yes. It's why Australia's the greatest country on earth, right? This is John Howard's dream. But you can learn about what other Prime Minister's dreams were by taking on the course.
Thanks for sharing, Cam.
I think that's enough.
Yeah, well, maybe if no one buys the course, some sales companies might hit you up.
Yeah, if when we are asking you to buy land in Scotland, that's when you know that's on you. That's
yeah.
on you. You had your chance to not have that.
You could prevent us from flogging NFTs. Like, it's in your hands.
Okay, we are going to look at Ted Theodore today. We have mentioned him on the podcast before. What do we remember about
His name.
Yeah,
His
Red Ted
name.
Redemption.
Yeah, Red Ted Redemption, but also just that his name's Ted Theodore. Like, what's doing there?
Is his first name Theodore?
No, it's not.
Yeah, silly.
What does he think? Like, so he's Edward Theodore. Why is he gone by Ted?
Yeah, that's outrageous. Yeah, he could not even Ed. Like, just, there's no T anywhere. What's he thinking?
Well, maybe the Ted is for Theodore.
That's
rather
a really
than
good
Edward.
point. Yeah.
It was called Ted Theodore.
Yeah, I know. That's
So Red
that's
Ted-
where it gets
yeah.
confusing.
He must have been called Ted, like, in the handball courts or something. And then he's like,
People called Edward could be called Ted.
you reckon?
Yeah, it's possible.
Teddy. Yeah, they often go by Teddy. If you're
Oh. Okay.
Teddy Sheringham, Teddy Roosevelt. He wasn't a Edward, but like you can go by Ted.
he was a Theodore.
What does the chipmunk go
Also,
by?
yeah, I was gonna say is Theodore your favorite chipmunk?
He's everyone's favorite, isn't
Yeah, I think so.
he? People that say they like Simon are just want to be. I'm an individual too.
Who's your favorite Ninja Turtle?
I only know Donatello.
Okay.
I like Raphael.
Yeah,
'Cause he's
that's
red.
a Raphael. I can see that. That's the angry one.
Well, that's not me.
The rebel, if you will.
Again, probably not me. But hey, we move.
Now, Edward's dad was not called Theodore. He was called Teodorescu.
What?
Teodorescu.
That's a cool name.
It's not. It's Theodore in another language.
Oh.
I won't get you to guess because we'll probably not get there. It's Romanian.
Oh.
I was gonna say Hungarian.
Wow.
Hungarian.
Wait, what? Austro-Hungarian? I don't know. In this time period, probably. So his dad was Romanian, mum was Irish. They actually met on board their ship to Australia.
Wow.
I know. The stars have well and truly
Sounds like
aligned.
a musical
beautiful.
Broadway.
Again, if funding the course, we can go into the arts and make Red Ted Redemption the musical. So basically, he is born into Australia. His dad changes his name from Teodorescu. He doesn't change it to Theodore. He changes it to Basil. It does remind me of international students that need to adopt a Western name. And so my father-in-law has taught kind of a lot of multicultural schools, and he says he's got some rippers. He said his personal highlight was he had a student go by the name Pepsi.
That's great. Like, he just introduces himself as Pepsi, like, on his academic transcript.
yeah.
Go down as Pepsi.
I'm just imagining like the parents talking like before they put their customs application through or whatever, just like, no, we need to really convince them that we love the West.
What
is
bigger icon of the West than, like, yeah, I certainly met a lot of, like, there's a lot of people with like the generation names of the generation before us. There's a
Yeah.
lot of like Kevins and like Allens and like even a Craig or two, I reckon, I met at uni. Like, it's
not a Pepsi.
not a Pepsi. That's
Pepsily.
breaking new ground.
So he grew up in Adelaide, bounced between a couple of mining towns, and then earned his stripes.
Pepsi.
It's Red Ted. A lot of people have very memeable names from the podcast so far. So he kind of earned his stripes in Broken Hill as, or just working in the mines. And that's where he got into the labour movement and kind of saw the value of unions, so to speak. He then moved up to North Queensland and he moved up to Cairns.
Fair enough.
He became involved in a union called the Amalgamated Workers Association of North Queensland.
Okay.
So basically, any banner of workers in North Queensland, most of them fell under this union. And
Right. So it was sort of the union of unions, or was it just all like when you say
like sugar workers, sheep workers, that sort of
Right,
thing.
it was
would
just
all
this
be
sort of
part this
catch-all kind of thing. Yeah.
Just like it's like just the Queensland, the Union of Queensland. That's
Yeah.
the most
Yeah.
important thing. And so,
not a specific type of work, just any, like.
well, he's got a mining background.
Yeah.
But this
This union was just everyone.
amalgamated
Yeah,
workers. So he rises up to become the secretary of this union and becomes quite influential in it. In 1911, there's a pretty massive sugar strike. Now, sugarcane. We know anything about the kind of background of who worked on sugarcane plantations in Australia? What workers?
What kind of people?
Yeah, were working in the sugarcane fields.
Was it Indigenous people?
Close, but no.
Yeah. Okay.
Like Pacific Island.
Yeah, Pacific Islanders.
Yeah.
So we've spoken about this on the pod before. Scott Morrison got in hot water for saying Australia's never had a history of slavery, when that factually wasn't true because there was indentured servitude on these farms where effectively Pacific Islanders weren't paid properly and they were seen as a cheaper alternative of labour than the white Australians. So some of the biggest opponents of this were people who were in ardent support of the White Australia policy, which is a weird kind of crossover, but it's the White Australia policy. They're like, no, you can't use Pacific labour. This goes against the White Australia policy. What are you doing? And so as we moved towards kind of the end of the first decade of federated Australian history, Queensland relaxes its approach towards, opposite. It actually tightens its approach towards policing the use of Pacific labour on the sugarcane fields. And so now we've got white workers that have come and replaced them. So it's not as though Pacific people are being paid properly now. It's like, oh, well, if we have to pay them properly, we'll get white people to come in and do the job as well.
It's it happens now a lot. Like it's almost actually a little bit of an issue in that Pacific Island countries coming over here working, and then because they can get more money here, but it leaves them with no workers back home, and the families as well.
Well, the Pacific Island dreams to move to Australia, isn't it? A lot of the time.
Yeah, I guess so. But it's still like just seasonal work in rural Australia. It's,
Yeah. And so basically what's really important is in this 1911 to 1912 strike, we have people at the sugar mills basically standing outside, workers being like, no one can come in, no one can come out, and they actually arm themselves from stopping people coming in and out. Their demand is that you cannot just get us to work under the old terms. So we're not going to come in and work for the same wages that Pacific labourers were. Like, we demand proper pay and proper working conditions. And they basically don't allow the Queensland, any of these kind of Queensland sugar owners to come in and actually access the sugar mill. And Ted Theodore is one of the key organisers behind that strike. And so he kind of gets his shining moment of glory in the strike as he actually successfully gets, they win the strike and they now are getting paid properly. And so what happens with Ted Theodore is that he now actually merges with the Australian Workers' Union. So the Amalgamated Workers Association of North Queensland does a merger with the Australian Workers' Union, and he becomes president of the Queensland branch.
Okay.
So he's super high up in the Queensland unions at this point. So what would be the next logical step for Ted Theodore on his road to being etched into the history books of Year 6?
State government.
Oh, I like it. We're cooking here.
Surely. Queensland Labor Premier, right? If you're going to head of the unions in Queensland, it's the next step.
He did both at the same time.
Wow.
So,
Days. Get you a man who can do both.
Yeah. So we go back to 1909. He gets into state parliament, holding a seat in North Queensland. That seat then gets redesigned or kind of redrawn in 1912. So it's the seat's called Chillago. It's about, or Chillago, I don't know how it's pronounced. I've just seen it in writing. I don't know how far west it is of Cairns. I looked at it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's 1 hour. But then I remembered it's Queensland. Like that far on a map is, like an inch on a map is quite a long while.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a lot longer than an hour west of North Queensland. That's going to be his home base while he's in state politics. And that's going to be really important because there's a whole controversy that brews around his doings and dealings in the Chillago area that we're going to come back to, involving Jack Lang.
Oh boy.
Yeah, just get that name in
Friend
there.
of the pod.
You're doing nice, yeah. We did the Jack Lang podcast last year. We need to redo it because not only can we go into much more depth now, but on top of that, the podcast audio was really poor. I remember we were just distraught because some of the best zingers that Ben and people had come up with just got completely missed in that one. And then we were also kind of distracted by Marnus Labuschagne getting out in the cricket that we were watching at the same time.
Yeah, we've certainly upped our professionalism since then.
So he gets involved in state politics. Now, he is in opposition at this time, so Labor's not in. It's the Liberal Party that's in at this time. He quickly becomes the deputy leader of Labor. So a guy called Thomas Ryan is the leader of Labor in Queensland. They're in opposition and they're eyeing off an election win in 1915.
Okay. So post-Titanic.
And post...
Starting of the war, I guess. Somewhat more consequential.
Yes. And Don Bradman's debut in and around that time, is it?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
No.
There you go.
No.
Okay.
We did learn about this in the history of... From being in the other side, I can now see how easy it is to forget things. And I'm like, come on, we did this in a podcast. And you're
Maybe,
like...
yeah. I feel like he would have been a kid around then.
Yeah, maybe so he's 20s then when he starts.
Because he retired after World War II.
Yeah. Anyway, so Don Bradman's somewhere in the scene. But basically, we have the beginning of World War I, and that is going to quite badly fracture the Labor Party. Now, 1915, they're eyeing off an election. The Liberal Party in Queensland is led by a guy called Digby Denham.
Oh, yes.
What's his
I
name?
like it a lot.
Digby?
Digby Denham.
Denham.
Mordecai and Digby.
So he... Well, so 1915, he's surely going to lose the 1915 election.
Digby
is
yeah.
for the Liberal Party. So he comes up with a strategy to try and retain office. His strategy is to make voting compulsory. And the theory goes like this, right? Which party has the most mobilized voting base? It's the Labor Party. Because if you're part of your union, you've got to vote Labor and you've got to be very well disciplined and organized. And at this point in history, Labor hadn't really held that many offices across Australia. They'd had a little run in federal politics under a guy called Andrew Fisher. The first Labor guy that led Australia in federal politics was a guy called Chris Watson. He could basically get nothing done because he was a minority partner in a coalition. So basically, Labor governments had been pretty impotent in terms of holding office, but what they'd been really effective at was getting concessions from any of the other two parties. So when it was protectionists and free traders that were the two parties, Labor would basically flip-flop between them and say who can give us the better deal. And then when it was the Liberal Party that was in, now it's more of a two-party system. And so the Labor Party massively mobilised their voting base with the promise of proper wages and proper working conditions, which is the majority of people. Majority of people weren't business owners in Australia. So Digby Denham goes, well, if we make it compulsory, the 50-50 voters are more likely to vote for us. In a sense, everyone who might vote Labor will vote Labor. Like they will get to the polls. If they are thinking of voting for Labor, they will get to the polls on voting day and they will vote. Probably similar thing to America right now. If it's compulsory voting, Democrats win so easily. But the Republican voting base is so much more mobilized than the Democrat voting base is. So Digby Denham rolls the dice. It doesn't work. And so for the first time in Queensland, we actually have a majority Labor government that's in power. They had one in 1899, not a majority. So it's not the first time Labor had been in Queensland. Queensland actually held the first Labor government anywhere across the world. So
Wow.
it was in Queensland. That was in 1899. It was led by a guy called Anderson Dawson. They say you can't trust guys with two first names. You can trust a guy with two surnames.
Two surnames. Yeah, wow. And two sons as well in the names, Anderson Dawson. Like,
Wow.
yeah,
I never. Yeah.
Just okay. I don't know what to think about that.
Yeah, lots to ponder.
Yeah.
We'll pause here, meditate on it, come back. So it's the first time Queensland's got a majority Labor government that's in. And so Thomas Ryan, as the Premier, can now act really effectively. So he puts in rent controls, and so establishes housing court for anyone to be able to take their landlord to if they are unsatisfied with the way that they're being treated. I have gone to housing court before.
For the skate park.
For the skate park. We are currently recording this out of your dwelling. Speak nothing but positive words about your landlord on the podcast officially.
Yeah. Oh, I don't think we've had any.
Don't make us leave.
Yeah. I don't think we've had any problems.
Can you get Harry to stay?
Yeah, true. Yeah, trying to clear out another room.
So how was your experience in housing court?
Look, it's tough to say who won.
Okay.
We got them to pay 3 times what they were asking in compensation. We paid about half of what we wanted in compensation. That's how wildly disproportionate. Look, to cut a long story short, we had some swollen floorboards, as many people do, and it turned into something we called the skate park. And you could drop in. That's how swollen those floorboards were.
Was it like tech decks? Right.
Did you ever get a tech deck on it? It actually...
You probably have a lot of fun playing.
Yeah,
Maybe that should have been their case. Yeah. What are you talking about? We've actually added value to this house. No, so it was during lockdown in 2021. Nothing got done. So we asked for a rent reduction. The rent reduction was something ridiculous, like 1%. And we were paying like $600 of rent. So it's like a $6 reduction or whatever it was. So we didn't accept that. One of our housemates was a lawyer. So he said, well, we're going to take you to NCAT, National Civil Administrative Tribunal, if I'm not mistaken.
Very good.
And he prepared the case and everything. We're ready to go. Like 3 weeks before, he was like, oh, this is just a lot of effort. Look, if you guys want to do it, go for it. But I won't take this. And so me and another teacher that were in the house had to scramble to get this case. And we really had like a Mike Ross moment of like, we're not ready. We're not lawyers. We can't take the powers that be.
I'm picturing your now wife, who was, she was like the only sort of visitor coming to the house, being the sort of Donna of the situation. That she would sort of just say something in passing. Say that again.
Yeah. And so we tried our chances. We tried our luck. We ended up taking the court to NCAT. In preparation, I memorized like 100 years of case study law. So I can tell you all about like stuff that were happening to tenants in Liverpool and that sort of thing. I was ready to go. And then we get to NCAT. It's like a Zoom. It's like 2 minutes. It's like, all right, welcome. What do you want to pay? Yeah, just meet in the middle. And then she wouldn't. We were like, whatever, let's just get this over and done with. We will. And so then we had to have a phone call to try and sort it out ourselves. It was a very ugly phone call. And we got back into the Zoom room, and the judge was like, well, judge is a bit, I don't know, whatever they were. Was like, look, the photos are pretty bad. Just pay the money. And that's how it ended. So we did get victory in court. We're claiming it as a victory.
Yeah.
And we had a great moment outside the court steps of Loftus, right in front of the BP.
I won't settle.
Yeah.
There you go.
So
the landlord was quite, what's the word? Strict. Just didn't want to budge.
Oh, and just didn't want to fix it. So they didn't. That's a key detail. They never fixed it. She rocked up to the house without notice all the time, and would kind of play a bit of a sob story to each member of the house when she rocked up every time, and it felt awfully manipulative. And we took her to court. To housing court.
Yeah.
And so, shout out for anyone in Queensland.
Well played.
That option is now available to you thanks to the Thomas Ryan and Ted Theodore government.
Okay.
So we'll kind of press on. Other key things they did was they actually bought a bunch of land and agreed to just have the government get into the sheep industry. And basically... government, like Queensland government under Thomas Ryan, they ran farms. What they did was they then shipped the meat back to Brisbane, and there were government-owned shops that would sell meat at below market value. Basically, like, it was kind of not all-out war against the sheep industry, but it was certainly a shot fired that was, you guys are milking the system for far too much. You're massive. You've got kind of this like oligarchy and this kind of cabal control over Queensland. And so we are going to get ourselves in the industry and we will beat your prices. People will buy our meat and that will force you to put your prices down and make it more affordable.
Lambgate.
Lambgate.
I like that.
Ramsgate.
I like that a lot. Look at the backbone of that government, the spine.
Yeah.
Getting out there and
just
getting stuck in.
A notice on the camera there.
Yes. Now, a lot in Labor actually said they weren't going far enough, just nationalise the whole thing. But they were like, whoa. Like, let's just take on our enemies one at a time here. No. And so, yeah, I'm a big believer in that was the wise approach. That was the smart approach, smartest way you could approach it. It did make a lot of enemies in the pastoral industry for Ted Theodore. That's what you call it.
Yeah.
It doesn't match up to the name at all, really. Well, I mean, it does if you think like biblically of like Jesus the Good Shepherd and whatnot, and so like pastor and sheep does go hand in hand.
Yeah.
But it does feel strange to call them the pastoral industry.
Yeah. It's like, how do you make enemies in the pastoral industry? Isn't the whole thing that they're meant to look after you?
So we have that, and basically we see some other things. So this was crazy. There were no regulations regarding scaffolding on construction sites, so they implement regulations there, and they also implement price controls as well.
For scaffolding or just
for across a number of different industries.
What does like unregulated scaffold look like? It's just
surely
scaffold
it's
everywhere. Like,
surely like just. Do you mean scaffolding specifically, or just like working more broadly on scaffolding?
Oh,
like
yeah,
like OH&S kind of stuff.
Yeah. So it's basically like, do whatever works for you.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, there's got to be minimum standards there.
Yeah, just clip your carabiner onto the gutter and you're on.
Zip line to work.
Yeah.
Now, the price controls were implemented. I'm not sure if you lived in the glory days of FIFA Ultimate Team being unregulated.
Yeah.
FIFA 14 was my first, which was probably the freest market we've ever seen. It was absurd.
Price fixing was quite a common practice. So, and me and my friends, we engaged in a bit of crime when we were in high school.
Oh.
We bought a whole bunch. There's this Dutch player called John Goossens.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He had functional value for being a good long shotter. That was his functional value. He was an affordable option. And people would put him in their like Dutch Eredivisie teams because he had quite good long shots, but wasn't good at anything else. Now, we saw a gap in the PC market. So we got all these guys that didn't play PC at all to make PC accounts through the web app. So effectively, they registered to buy in another country's property market.
Yeah, good.
And together, we bought up the entire supply of John Goossens, and then we resold John Goossens. Like we kind of bought him for around about like 5,000 a piece. And then we all jacked up his value to about 500,000 a piece.
Wow.
It didn't work though, did it, Cam?
I don't think so. I can't quite remember. I did explain this to my students, one of my students that plays Ultimate Team, and I had a very insightful answer from another student who goes, isn't that just what people have done with our property market? It's like, oh,
my boy.
Too soon. Yeah, Ted Theodore might have something to say about that.
Yeah.
So basically,
yeah. Sorry. So on
the have done with the property market, just bought all the John Goossens.
Okay, something that has functional value, i.e. a house, and have flipped it for no functional use. They are not using those homes for themselves. They're using it as pure capital gains to flip it for a higher value,
make money,
or to have someone else rent it for functional value for them.
Yeah.
And look, a lot of supply in few hands was the point they were going for. Look, yeah, whatever. They Future quite clearly revealed their political hand there when they did that. Like, they're clearly not into like the real estate influencers or whatever. But yeah, the Thomas Ryan government was pushing ahead with quite a high level of reform in the Queensland economy, and they were making some enemies along the way. But the kind of overarching argument was just do it at a steady pace and pick our enemies and fight them one at a time.
Yeah.
Now, all of this is going on during what time period again?
This is World War One.
Yes. And the Labor Party actually completely fractured during World War One. So it started off being led by a guy called Andrew Fisher. We have spoken about him on the pod quite briefly. Andrew Fisher then resigned after not directly after, but after he Gallipoli went ahead without his knowledge, and he was the Prime Minister of Australia. So
Yeah, not a good look.
by the end of the year, he stepped back, and in came a guy called Billy Hughes.
Yeah.
That guy's
Another friend of the pod.
another friend of the pod. Does get a lot of action in the course as well.
Okay.
So Billy Hughes comes in, and Billy Hughes throughout 1916 goes and he visits Britain, and he is this quite militant speaker, and the British government, they roll him out across Britain, and he goes on speaking tours, basically convincing British people as to why the war's awesome and why they should enlist. At the end of 1916, he comes back and he's like, well, Britain have introduced conscription. We need to do the same thing, and we need to kind of help our men in the trenches by introducing conscription. Now, this completely divided the Labor Party across the board. Old school Labor were firmly supportive of it because they viewed themselves as citizens of the empire first, workers' rights guys second. That's how they viewed it. New Labor didn't agree with it at all because they didn't grow up with the British Empire being as much of a presence in their lives. So they grew up being like citizens of Australia second, workers' reform first. Or citizens of British Australia second, workers' reformed first.
Yep.
And so there was this complete fracture in the Labor Party. Billy Hughes was an old schooler. Ted Theodore, Thomas Ryan, they were new schoolers. And so what actually happened was the Labor Party moved to expel Billy Hughes, and Billy Hughes then took 23 other Labor MPs in federal parliament to form a new party called Nationalist Labor. Nationalist Labor and the Liberal Party then did a merger together to become the new Nationalist Party, and then they held government. A couple of the states followed suit with Billy Hughes, and governments that were once Labor governments then became nationalist governments, leaving Queensland as the only government across Australia that was still a Labor government. And so now it's Theodore and Ryan versus the whole of Australia. This is where it gets really spicy. So, Billy Hughes, he puts conscription to a referendum in 1916. Australia votes no. 1917, he tries again. And he has the second conscription referendum. The justification for this was that Russia Tsar Nicholas has stepped down in Russia. The Soviets are yet to come to power, but it's looking like Russia could pull out of World War I, in which case the Eastern Front collapses and everyone moves across to the West. So Billy Hughes is like, let's try again, because now that you know that Russia could potentially pull out of the Eastern Front, maybe you'll vote differently this time. So he goes and he campaigns for it in 1917. One of the key states he's trying to bring across is Queensland, and he actually campaigns in a town called Warwick. That's southern Queensland, a couple hundred kilometres west of the Gold Coast. So he's campaigning in Warwick, and what happens is a guy throws an egg at him.
Ah, I've seen this movie before.
Yes. Yeah. So Egg Boy, for all the plaudits he got, guys, the idea is 100 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
He gets hit
Political callback.
Yeah, it is. A bit of a paying homage.
Maybe Egg Boy, maybe he knew his Australian history.
Yeah. I wonder how he's doing.
Yeah.
What that guy's up to.
Yeah. He probably wouldn't need to buy the course. He sounds like he knows. Sounds like he's well across it.
So he gets egged and he's like, this is unacceptable. The Queensland police failed to properly protect me here. That's because they're controlled by Labor scum, Ted Theodore and Thomas Ryan.
Is this sort of like, how it's sort of with like the Trump assassination attempt, people pointing fingers at who was to blame, whatever. This is sort of the closest it sounds like we've gotten to that.
There was, an egg.
The egg.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
how did an egg get that close to happen?
Like, if we table the Harold Holt conspiracy theories for a moment, yes, that's probably the next closest. And so he gets hit in the air. He's like, this is unacceptable. The Queensland police have failed to properly protect me here.
Did he also get like a propaganda photo of him? Like the Secret Service guys all around him. He's just got like egg yolk dripping down his face.
I was looking for one on the course. I was actually looking, were there any photos? There's a painting, but it's just so cartoony. It's like Billy Hughes with this massive head going like... So Billy Hughes goes, this is unacceptable. We need a new police force that is from the federal government, and he founds the Commonwealth Police. In the 1980s, the Commonwealth Police and the ACT Police do a merger to become the AFP. The whole reason we've got the AFP is because Billy Hughes got egged.
That's crazy. Maybe Egg Boy was thinking about that when he's like, we need police reform, and this is the only way to do it.
Maybe we can get Interpol to have like proper powers.
He wants the UN. He wants
if I do this, maybe Ban Ki-moon could be resurrected like this. Yeah, it was insane. And so it's just wild in terms of what's happening in Labor and in Queensland in the World War I period. Other key reform that the Ryan Theodore government passed was that women were now allowed to have representation in Parliament. That is also borne about by circumstance due to the war as well. But it's a progressive move on their part. And we start to see women get involved in Parliament there as well. Now, we get to the end of the war and Labor, at least on at the federal level, is in disarray. Billy Hughes has taken across so many key members out of their party. And so they're led by a guy called Frank Tudor, but they're in pretty strong disarray there as well. You've also got the beginning of the Country Party, what is now the Nationals, and they are also peeling some seats away from Labor as well. So basically, we've got this really difficult situation where Labor looks like it's got no potential leaders at the federal level. So Queensland's flourishing there. Queensland's doing really well. And so Thomas Ryan essentially gets tapped on the shoulder and they say to him, hey, come and consider being our leader when Frank Tudor inevitably loses to Billy Hughes at the next election. And so Thomas Ryan leaves state parliament and he goes to federal parliament. That means that Ted Theodore is now the new leader of Queensland. Now, the Theodore government is an interesting one. It ends with him abolishing the Senate in Queensland.
Wow. That's a crazy thing to do. It's very Palpatine of him.
Yes. Now, I'm going to set you up a bit of context and we'll look at it the next episode. But here's the teaser for the next one.
Oh my gosh.
It's all about
How
sheep.
exciting. It's all about sheep. It always has been.
So, basically, Ted Theodore has already fired one bullet by having these new lamb stores in Brisbane. And basically what he does is he pushes for them to increase their rent. So what happens is the government buys a whole lot of land and they say, hey, you can put your sheep on our blocks of land. So they have to pay rent to the government. And when he comes to be the premier, in 1920, he makes a move to actually try and increase the rent that these pastoralists have to pay to the Queensland government. So he goes and he makes that move.
But the prices are still controlled by the government?
They don't mandate the price. There's price controls to an extent.
Yeah.
They don't mandate all the way they want to go. And I'll come on to the price controls very soon. The method they've done so far was basically just to create their own company and have that beat the market value to drive others down to compete with them.
So like theoretically, if they raise this rent, they could then pass that on to customers if they
totally.
decide,
And
right?
they could use that revenue anyway. And basically, Theodore's argument is that too much of Queensland's economy is tied into the wealth of these wealthy sheep owners. And so basically, it's like for a more equitable economy, we need to kind of give you a more even playing field and take some money out of your hands and redistribute it elsewhere and have that money flow into other people's hands. Obviously, the sheep owners don't like this very much. And so they have quite a strong control over a lot of the senators, and the senators knock it down. And that's in 1920. They also now declare Ted Theodore as their kind of number one enemy. And we will do whatever it takes to take down Ted Theodore's government. So the name Red Ted starts to emerge at this point. So people being like, yeah, filthy commie, Labor guy, union background, and Ted rhymes with red. We've got a ripper here.
But doesn't like the Senate.
He doesn't like the Senate.
Which is
even more
famously
red.
Famously red.
So again, I just would have loved to have been at the think tank that day when they finally landed on it.
Yeah.
Say that again.
Yeah. Red Ted. Yeah, I read an article about Ted. Say that again.
And so...
Bit of a jump.
In 1921, the federal government is looking at Britain for financial loans. So Bank of England, which is their version of the Federal Reserve, plus London finance institutions. And so Ted Theodore goes, great, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to get some loans from London as well. These sheep owners are so powerful that they can actually get to London before Ted Theodore does. And they convince them not to give the Queensland government any money because they can't be trusted and they're filthy commies.
Wow.
And so London just goes, we're not giving you any money at all. This is what, like,
that is crazy.
Like,
yeah.
And again, and this is in the era of pre-planes where, like, if you could get physically, it's like, can you imagine just the Amazon documentary that could be made about that journey over?
Yeah,
like, will they or won't they beat Ted Theodore to London? So Ted Theodore then takes a detour on his journey and he goes to New York. He has to pay significantly more interest in New York.
Concrete jungle where dreams are made of.
He was playing that as he sailed the high seas.
And they make him pay extra. This is the first time in Australian history that an Australian government has borrowed from a non-European institution. And
It's the new world.
Yeah, started something special.
And what's really interesting is, look, Australia has its proper pivot to America in the 1940s under John Curtin, but we're starting to see the foundations that are laid by this Labor Queensland government that they've gone, well, we'll sod off then. If you're not going to actually give us any money, we're going to go to New York. And maybe Seinfeld can deliver the goods. That's where we're going to leave it for next time, because when Ted Theodore comes back, he wants to wage war on the Senate. Wow. And he's like, you guys, you've betrayed me for the last time here. Now, it's going to wrap up for you guys. We're going to keep recording and keep having this interesting conversation. As you finish up, look in the link in the description. It's all there for you. Just open it up. It takes about 2 minutes to sign up. And we'll see you next week for the demise of the Senate under Red Ted.
Thank you, Cam.
Looking forward to it.